Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, this is your good buddy Pining, and today I am with my friend Dr. Jerome, and we thought we would do something a little different. We all know that our grand leader, the top dog of TF Metal's report, is on a well-needed sabbatical. And so instead of doing a usual market-oriented podcast, Dr. Jerome has kindly set this up so that he and I could talk a little bit about things that, as longtime Turdites, we are interested in. I wanted to get his perspective on some things. He wanted to get some on mine. So if you happen to have the perfect Manhattan at hand, go ahead and mix it up and join Dr. Jerome and Pining for a little relaxation time. Doc, how are you doing today, my friend?
Well, I'm doing just fine, and maybe I should go grab a beer, a Dos Equis, my favorite, but it's not afternoon yet, so I'll forego that.
Well, I'm not certain that would stop rickshaw ETF, but, to each his own. To each his own.
Yeah.
So, hey, well, why don't we just jump right in?
Sure.
I wanted to get started with you and give maybe a little general background. What brought you originally, back in the day, to investing in the metals and to TFMR? And now that we've been through what we've been through, how has your thinking, regarding the things that brought you here at the time, changed or evolved since then?
Well, in the post I put up this morning, in Craig's absence, I discussed that a little bit, but essentially I knew something was wrong with the economy and just kind of stumbled onto silver investing, and then stumbled my way into the old Watchtower site and started reading Zero Hedge. And finally, after I think it was 2 years since the crisis, I finally started to get some answers. And so it was almost by accident, and I imagine that's the case with a lot of folks that are here at TFMR. And then as I began to realize the scope of what was going wrong with the economy and the real reason to buy silver rather than just make a little money, it really did force me gradually to change my approach to find some place where we can prep and be prepared, but not live in the woods and miss out on life in the meantime. And I'm glad we took that approach.
Absolutely. Now, given I know that you and I have experienced this to some degree. What has changed or evolved about your thinking in those things from those sort of halcyon and scary days of 2010, 11, 12 to now? Because there's a lot of water under the bridge. What do you think has changed about your ideas regarding those things in the time you've been here?
Well, part of the change is it didn't collapse yet. And I began to ponder that, and I thought, wow, they have control over the printing of money. They can create as much money as they need to put out fires, and they have the power of the mass media to continue to persuade everybody that this money is good. And it just hit me one day how powerful those two things are for somebody in control like this. And that just kind of slowed me down, that this could take a while to collapse. A lot of people have to wake up first, and maybe things need to get a lot worse first before we get to a bad place.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and I think that would be, for all of us sort of long-timers, I don't think there's one among us who would disagree with this. If there's something that we got wrong early on, it was estimating time. It's funny because really what we're talking about is a trade, if you think about it, whether it's prepping, stacking, investing. In some ways, all of it's a trade. You're trading time, money, energy, value from one area of your life into another. And the one thing I think all of us were guilty of is thinking that something was imminent when obviously it hasn't proven that way. Now, that doesn't mean that all of our thinking in every area was wrong, but it does mean that we messed up the time factor, and I think all of us would very much acknowledge that.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'd rather mess it up the way we have than blow it off. Oh, it's 2020, maybe 2025, and then get caught by surprise. And
Yeah.
and I found that prepping actually has been the easier thing to do and the less expensive thing to do, to have food on hand, water, and to we moved across the country to be close to family, and thought that was pretty important. And we purchased a second property. Currently, it's rented out because we can't afford to just hold it empty there. But it's there waiting for us when we need it. Not as prepped as I'd like to be, but that's actually been the easier part than grappling with these markets every day and chewing on these big losses in physical metal.
Yeah. Oh, understandable. And that has obviously led to a real attrition. There's a lot of old timers around TFMR, but a whole lot less than there were here at the beginning of the folks who started out. There's been, an understandable attrition, and I think it takes a certain type of person and mindset and approach to be able to survive this long, through that whole process of both the bear market and just seeing the world realistically and knowing what the dangers are, and still be able to continually face it. It's a tough thing. There's no doubt.
Well, let me throw that question back at you, Pining. It's been 7 years now, and why are you still here? How have you managed to hang on here and still be around?
Well, it's a good question, and I would say there's a number of factors in there for me. One of them is that there's the trading part of it, and then there's the stacking part, and then there's just the why are you at TFMR. So the trading part is quite simply that I have a lot of flaws as a trader, tremendous flaws. But one of the good things that I do is that I'm a fraidy cat. And when I'm in a trade, I have absolutely no hesitation whatsoever of bailing very quickly. And that sort of instinct has kept me alive and kept me with a trading account when I suspect a whole lot of other folks trading these same markets are not there. There used to be a whole bunch of names at Palin's Trading Corner, for example, that I would follow year to year.
Yeah.
And then you see these little notes on the, once in a while in the comments, somebody saying, oh, I can't, I'd love to do that, but I can't because I've used up all my margin. And I'm thinking, holy cow, really? These guys were supposedly the pros, and yet they're fully margined out and can't trade anymore. So I think I was fortunate in that when the trade would go south on me, I always bailed really fast and was able to live through a lot of bad mistakes.
So the
stacking. Oh no, go ahead.
You'd call that one of your trading strategies, then?
Absolutely. Yeah, and another one is, there's a number of things that I've sort of learned the hard way, and one of them is that I'm guessing maybe 60 to 70% of the time there is not a trade in the metals, and it was really hard for me to develop the patience to watch the markets every single day, be on your phone, check, what's the open, what's at 11, what's at 2, what's the close, what does it look like at night during Chinese hours, and do that day after day after day, but not be in it. All of us, I think, have a tendency, if we're watching the markets, we want to trade them, and that's a deadly instinct, because most of the time there's not a trade. There's not a good trade, or at least I should say, there's not a trade where you, as a small investor, can see an advantage. And so one of my strategies is to be in cash a great deal of time and not jump in until I see a very clear, well-defined trade. Here it is. Here's where I think it's going. Here's my tight stop loss, and then get in. And unless I'll sometimes watch a setup for 3, 4, 5 weeks with no money in the markets, not make it, and then make one trade. And if I get stopped out, it might be another 3 or 4 weeks before I do that. But the flip side is, I think, by having that discipline, you make sure that you're only getting in on your best chances to succeed. And I think that's helped a lot. In terms of stacking, it's not bugged me a bit. We always say, your stack is as shiny. None of that has bothered me in the least. And as the years have gone on, it amazes me how many things we who were paying attention knew and would have been dismissed as tinfoil hat nut jobs that were not conspiracy theory, that have now been proven to be conspiracy fact. So we were right the whole time. And having my stack through that whole ordeal as insurance doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me that the building didn't collapse.
Right.
I do enough that it very well might have got my family out. That's not a dumb play if the building is still standing, So that part doesn't bug me a bit.
Right. I think all of us here are not upset that we haven't collapsed yet. And I've even come to question if it's going to be that kind of collapse. I know something's going to change radically, and it's not going to be nice. But, maybe there will be some kind of fiat system that hangs together, but the whole country just slides into third world status. That's been what I've thought lately.
I agree completely, and that's a really tough one. Whether there is a cataclysm or a series of small crises that add up to one big shock period of crises, or whether there's just a long, slow decline, is a really hard call to make, and I wouldn't pretend to have the answer either. But I think from a rational standpoint, you just have to do the best you can to be ready to survive and thrive no matter what those scenarios are for yourself and your family.
Right.
It's the best we can do.
Well, I started typing while you were talking here, and I put down Pining's trading rules. And number one is Fraidy Cat, and number two is no trade today. And I think those are pretty good ways to go, especially in the metals market. And I'd have to say number two there, I've been really bad about, because some days it's like I just got to trade something. And that's one of the challenges I have as an investor is it's okay to sit out if you don't know what to do.
Big time. It's deadly. And you know what? There's something, Argentus actually said this to me a number of years ago, and it was something that I struggled, and really, it's one of those things where I turned it over in my head for a very long time, trying to wrestle with its meaning, or at least its meaning for me. And he said, unless you have an edge over the market, and you know what your edge is over the market, do not trade. And I thought, well, I don't have supercomputers. I don't have, I'm not sitting there at Goldman Sachs with a, 70 PhD math people behind me. I don't have, what on earth can I have as this little guy on a computer with an edge over the market? And it took me a very long time to realize that it was technical analysis, setups, and seeing when these big moves are being made regardless of what I do and piggybacking onto them. That was the one thing I could do, is to see when these things were happening and only then put my capital at risk.
Right.
Because other than that, you're the little fish who gets eaten by the big fish. And I was tired of being eaten.
Yeah, I agree. And I've stepped out of trading altogether several times over the years, and I always seem to sneak back and open up the trading account and try something else.
Well, and I will say this, one of the other things I've done is I decided that I would really work on my techniques. So over the years, I have joined to learn different techniques. I joined Paul Coughlin's trading service to learn his use of pitchforks, Argentus, and I'm still a member of his Rhythm and Price to learn timing and cycles. I'm a member of another paid service right now that's a totally different method of technical and charting. So just by trying to continually add to my sort of trading repertoire and working on it all the time, and then write down every trade, see what you did right, and you'd be surprised at how we fool ourselves.
Yeah.
I realized a couple of years ago, I had gone back and looked at my trades and realized I'd made like 15 trades, and 10 of them were solid singles. 2 of them were small losses that were fine, but the 3 that killed me were all times where I just got unreasonably short, went hard short the market, and then stubbornly stayed in it.
It's the stubbornness.
And there was something about my psychology. I was just sure it was going to go down. I ignored my stop losses, and oddly enough, it was during a bear market, I lost money, most of my money in that year period, shorting, not being long.
Wow.
And it was a weird thing about that was just happened to be my psychology, and I realized I need to be really on top of this and watch myself. So,
well, over a couple times over the years, I think I've cautioned our colleagues out there to don't take my trading advice unless you want my results, which have not been good. So I try to stay away from offering any advice. I'm still learning and learning the hard way. But I like what you've done with subscribing to trading services and, that old, is it an adage? I don't know about, it takes 10,000 hours to learn a profession. I think Malcolm Gladwell talked about that. And I don't think I've traded for 10,000 hours or have studied that much. I'm still a newbie, even after 10 years.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of right. I really do think that it's you put in your time and you try not to, in the metals market, so the deep end of the pool. So it's a hard one to learn in. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Hey, let's change the subject a little bit out of the trading into something else. I know you have kids, and I do too. Yours are a bit older than mine, and I wanted to ask you, what is your advice and what's been your strategy for discussing the end of the great Keynesian experiment with your children? At what ages did you broach the subject? How deeply did you get into it with them? And, looking back, would you do it in the same way?
Right. We have a pretty close family here at our house, and our kids were teenagers when this all started. My son's 26 now, my daughter 23. But back when they were, 19 and 16, when this started, they knew something was going on. I mean, we were both pretty upset about everything as we learned it, and I started bringing home silver, and my kids one day, let's get all the silver out and play pirate treasure, and
so you had to tell them something,
right? And interestingly, there was a show on Netflix. I'm trying to remember the name of it, but it was about the end of the world and atomic war went off, and we watched, I think, both seasons of that show. I can't recall the name right now. And it was about people trying to survive in this little Kansas town, probably close to
I remember that
Kurt's
show. I know
house.
exactly what you're talking about. I can't remember the name either, but
right.
Yeah, I remember that.
The kids loved it. We watched every episode, and they really got into the prepping. And then we had the remnants of a hurricane blow through and knock our power out for a week. Oh, and they just loved that, getting out the Coleman stove and cooking food and living very roughly for a while. But after a couple of years when nothing happened, they got a little more cynical about my prepping. Oh, Dad, he's reading that blog again, and I just had to back off and chill out myself about the situation. And that's during that whole time I was making the big turn, like the big ships on the ocean, towards let's just live our lives. And yeah, we'll stay prepped, but we have a life to live, and I need to get these kids through college and help them get launched into their careers, and that's got to be a priority of mine. And along the way, my son's become a stacker, and he has a nice little stack. And my daughter has done some work for my wife and I on our real estate business, and we've paid her in silver and told her, you can just, anytime you need cash, you can just go cash this in. It's better than a check. And she hasn't cashed any in yet. She's just saved it. So I think we're doing okay on that, and just backing off and not pushing them on it has probably been the most helpful thing for our family.
Interesting. Well, that's valuable advice. And see, my kids were way too young to scare with that kind of stuff when the financial crisis happened. And so my situation has been a little bit different in that my wife has been sort of on the edge, meaning she has been supportive, but doesn't want to know the extent of it at any given time. And in retrospect, that's been a good thing.
I think so.
As nothing major has occurred since that time. It has been good in that we have basically sailed through pretty easily. In terms of getting our lives together, just incorporating things as hobbies or as a lifestyle choice that are in fact preps was probably our best strategy. But I still have only barely, and my kids are now in high school, talked about some of these things with them. And it's something I struggle with because I don't want to give them a nihilistic view of the world to the degree that I would discourage them from going to college or being ambitious about a career or their future dreams. But on the other hand, I struggle with how much or how little to share with them, and I don't know how to resolve it.
Yeah, some of these questions, we don't have answers today. Maybe we don't need to make a decision today about if my daughter goes to grad school or not. And we'll address these things as they come up. And so I think you've been wise in distancing your family from it a bit and shielding them. That's been healthier for our family. For me to focus on the problems my wife says we need to address around the house. And that's been good for us to stabilize us and to keep our marriage solvent. Because I know some of our colleagues have ended up in divorce, at least a couple of them.
Yeah, and I do think that there is something to be said for if you're going to be the awake one, just deciding, and I kind of did this for my wife and I, just decided, okay, I'm gonna be the one who's on the watchtower, and I'm just gonna quietly keep an eye out and everything. But that doesn't mean I have to tell her everything.
Right.
She doesn't need to know about Cyprus bailouts or the stuff going down in Canada with the same plans or Mark Carney or any of that. I need to. So it's enough that I know and I'm informed and I'm keeping an eye out, but I don't need to scare her with all these things. And by doing that, I think it has, over the long haul, been much better for us. I really do.
Well, changing the subject again, you mentioned finding hobbies that are actually prepping that you enjoy doing, and I know you posted a picture of your place there out where you lived some years ago and talked about all your apple trees. And how do you balance all this with pruning and probably canning applesauce, I don't know, and or making hard cider, and maintaining your family, your career, the time it takes to invest and keep an eye on markets, and it's just a lot.
Yeah, you know what, it really is. I guess this is going to sound bad, but I rarely go out. I don't see movies. My life is I go to work, and I have my kids, and we have the farm, and that's it. And and of course, the trading is stuff that I keep up with, during gaps in the day, every day, and set aside time for that. But that's it. I mean, that is there's really not much room for anything else. But the flip side, though, is I think that we have done a nice job of making lifestyle choices. We have 2 big gardens. We grow easily 90% of the vegetables that we eat in a given year, for the whole year. I mean, we can everything. All of it's fresh, organic. Matter of fact, my littlest one, who's now 10, when he was 8 or 9, his grandmother was asking him something about a grocery store. And he had said he hadn't been in one for like a half a year. And she said, well, why is that? And he says, well, the grocery store is where you go when you run out of food, and we never run out of food.
So no Hot Pockets for those kids?
Heck no, absolutely not. Well, and 2 of my kids have celiac disease, dietary restrictions, so mass-produced food is something they simply can't eat anyway. So we're making from, fresh ingredients our own meals every day. So
excellent.
So, by mixing in stuff like that and by saying, okay, gardening in the orchard is going to be our hobby. We're going to provide food for our family. This is a lifestyle choice. Yeah, it's a prep, but it's also just a way to work. When I do have hobbies, like I had a choice recently to do one of a couple of things. And I chose to, instead of doing something that was fun but frivolous, I chose to do something that was fun but useful. I'm learning to blacksmith.
Wow.
I got a little starter forge, got the tools on eBay, took a couple of blacksmithing classes, and I'm just loving it. It's really fun to heat up metal, bash it around, make it into what you want. I made my first two. I got fired up watching Forged in Fire on History Channel.
Yeah.
These guys competitively make knives. I got fired up watching that, and I thought, dude, I could do that. So I took a carriage bolt from a junkyard around here that was from a semi-truck, bashed it into a couple of shapes, quenched it, and made it two knives, a big one for me and a small one for my wife to use in the garden. And so now I know how to do it. Now, will that ever come into play? Probably not. But it's been fun to acquire that skill and to do that as a hobby, knowing that that also might someday be valuable. Now, I hope I never have to use it in that way. I hope it's just a fun hobby.
I can see you running out to your forge at the close of the markets on a day when we've been really smashed and just going at that metal with your hammer.
Yeah, well, let me tell you, grabbing that hammer on a Saturday, markets close on Friday, there's selling into the close, $2.5 billion in notional gold got dropped for absolutely no reason. And I'm like, heat up a piece of metal and pound on it for 5 hours. That's really, it's quite nice. All right, then, Doc, I'd like to get your opinion on this one. As far as TFMR, what is the role of a blog like this one for stackers and preppers versus its role for mining investors? In other words, is this a true community that does anyone good beyond trading tips? What's your take on that?
Well, it's interesting, and being a communication professor for years, I've been really interested in community, and my take is kind of mixed on this. I have met with 3 of our other members in person and just really enjoyed getting to know them and was astounded at their expertise. I think CPN Scarlett and I had dinner a couple of times. Our family stopped by his place and met with a guy, Silverwood, I haven't seen in a while, and just had a great conversation. And another one of our members is a farmer, and I think I wrote a post about my conversation with him. And these are people I could be good friends with right away if we lived in the same neighborhood. And so, this blog has made that possible, and I think that almost anybody on this blog I could have a very similar relationship with, and I do private messaging with folks all the time and just really enjoy that part of it. So in some sense, there's community here, and if nothing else, we're just encouraging each other to stick with it. That we're on the right track, we're doing the right thing, and don't give up and go back and, take the blue pill. I don't know if that was ever retroactive in the Matrix, but I think we're just encouraging each other. And in a bigger sense, if we do live nearby some other people, I don't know that it's possible, 2 or 3 members who are going to relocate anyway, could relocate together. That would be a completely different dynamic. But the role of what we have here, for me, has just been to encourage me to stick with this, as well as a place where I've learned a lot about trading, and I've gone from losing money regularly to pretty much breaking even these days. And if I keep learning and following good advice here, hopefully I can start to make a little fiat with the trading. So,
I couldn't agree more. I've had the privilege to meet with, I think it's now 5 of our fellow Turdites in person, and some of them multiple times, both on the East Coast and on the West Coast. I've met California Lawyer in person, and just I couldn't echo your sentiments more. Fabulous people. Cal is such an astounding guy, and Murphy and I have got together numerous times. He's come over to my house. and he lives in several states away. But there is a genuine community.
Yeah.
It's not, and I've had the exact same experience that you have. When you sit there and read, 200, 300, 500 posts of someone over a course of years, you genuinely get to know them.
You do.
I mean, you really, really do. You see them on their good days, their bad days. You know their takes on different things. So when you sit down in a diner and start talking, Murphy and I run out of time each and every time. I mean, there's no end to what we can talk about. We instantly became very good friends. Same with Cal. There's no question. And Cal, I mean, he's such a fabulous. He would give you the shirt off his back. I mean, he is the antithesis of every shark lawyer stereotype as a person. Just the most honorable, fabulous, generous man that you could meet. And I think that's the way most Turdites are. And it's been really a striking thing. So I couldn't agree more. And that has been a huge factor in keeping me around. And there's one other thing, though, that I would be very remiss in not saying. In being a member of, over the years, of a large number of investing newsletters, sites, trading communities, let me tell you, TF is absolutely the reason why I'm here. And there's a number of reasons. A, he's very, very good at what he does.
Yeah.
He works harder than anyone I've ever seen to provide great content, contacts. I mean, you and I right now, if we wanted to get a message to or even have a conversation with people as diverse as and well-connected as Ned Naylor Leyland or Eric Sprott or Maloney or any number of other real movers and shakers, we would have the ability to do it. I mean, we really would through him. And all of the extraordinary work he's done. I mean, this guy has just worked his tail off. And he's been very, very good at it. But there's another thing. In some of these other places, I've noticed that when in the life cycle of their site or their careers, whenever something comes that is to their benefit, they move and will screw subscribers every time. Or if it's choice of between A and B, and A is to the detriment of the community, but it's their own interests, all these other people follow their own self-interest. And what has impressed me tremendously about Craig is that there have been numerous times in the life cycle of TFMR, back to the Blogspot days, where he could make choices that would have benefited him personally or financially, but would have hurt the community. Each and every time, he did what was better for the group. And I can't tell you what that kind of integrity means to me in terms of being able to trust somebody. Because I've seen other newsletter writers shade the news, hide things that were not to their benefit. Craig, even if it makes him look bad, tells it like it is every stinking time. And that kind of integrity and character, you can't put a price on. So I absolutely know that if there's something nasty going on, he's going to know, and he is going to tell me. I can't say that about any of these other people. So that's why I'm here. I mean, it's a tremendous credit to him and the trust he has built over these years. And I think it's a big reason why most of us are still here, to be honest with you.
I agree. I've really appreciated Craig's consistency over the years, his willingness to admit when he's wrong, and he probably could have made quite a bit more money being a broker somewhere than he has running a website
or
like this.
Or taking the site in different directions that are more financially oriented. He could have done that, trust me, numerous times, but it wasn't to what the core mission of the place was,
right,
and what would have taken care of the community. I think that's a great credit.
Right, at the end of the great Keynesian experiment, and now and then I write something, I'm about to post it, and then I look at that acronym at the bottom of the page, and I think, this really doesn't contribute. I'll just delete it. But I think Craig's done an excellent job at keeping every one of his posts focused in that direction.
Yep, no doubt, no doubt. Well, hey, my friend, we're probably running on a little longer than people may be working on their second drink, and we don't want them to work on their third drink by now.
No, that would be irresponsible. It wouldn't be for the good of the community. And
That's
probably,
right. Well, hey, my friend, it has been a pleasure to talk with you. I'm glad that everything's going well with you, and thank you for setting this up.
Oh, well, thank you for suggesting the idea, and this has been a lot of fun.
Outstanding. And hey, folks out there in Turdville, I hope you have a very good day, good week, and we'll see you in the comments section. Take care.